I realized I had to go last night and change some of that stuff because of what I had heard and want to pick up on some of the important themes. And basically, what I'm doing is talking about work that I've done for years and years, even started after the Stanford Prison Experiment, on burnout. That wasn't a word I knew at the time, but I knew that I was in a situation where I was shocked, I was horrified by what I was seeing, by how people were treating other people, and wondering, is it just me? And everybody was saying, yeah, something wrong with you. I mean, can't you take it? This is human, behavior and all this kind of thing. And that got me interested in understanding how we understand who we are and the emotional feelings we have and so forth. So I actually interviewed prison guards, but I went on to interview a lot of other people. And one day somebody said, I don't know what they call it, but we say burnout. I thought, okay, let me keep going with this. And so for the last few years, I have been doing interviews and research with all kinds of people, often in human service, healthcare, the ministry, all kinds of things where people are reaching out to help other people who are suffering, people who need education, people who are in pain, who, all of this kind of thing. And sometimes they're finding that even though they have this deep passion to do this work, it's too hard sometimes. And what happens with burnout, as you can see here, it's as though the fire of that stressful environment that they're working in burns them out, and they leave. But there's a second fire that people talk about, and it was used on the cover of the first book I wrote about with the interviews and so forth. And it's people talk about the fire within, the passion, the thing that drives you, the thing that keeps you going despite all of this. And when that extinguishes, that's real burnout. So there's the external fire, there's the internal fire. But as I started thinking about it recently, and particularly since I've been doing research with activists, because they talk about the problems they have with burnout. And so some of what I've learned from them is what I want to share with you today. And I guess I'm not sure that the image of fire is the best one for what we're doing. And I actually thought about this a lot after I heard Anthony start our session yesterday with Sister River. So water is going to be another theme that I'm going to come back to. One of the themes that you'll hear from me that a lot of people have spoken about is sort of moving from I to we, from me to we. And so I'm going to say a lot about what other people are, how important they are for us. So it's not so much just the lone hero, but I really want to spend more time talking about what Heroic Imagination Project talks as hero squads, doing it with others, being partners, being teams, sustaining each other, and so forth. And that is going to be what is particularly important. So if you're going into some activist kind of thing, like working on becoming heroes, let me warn you, there is something that comes from the passion. It's like a double-edged sword. It can be very good in the sense of driving you and pushing you and so forth. But this is a problem up here. Culture of martyrdom and a culture of selflessness. And when you're a social activist, it's easy to begin to move into these kinds of things. And it's a culture that you have embodied in yourself. And it's more of a me kind of thing than it is a we. Culture of martyrdom, it's like one of the activists said to me, you're just working all the time. It's on, and you're driving yourself, and it's like an anorexic getting thin. You can never get thin enough. If you're an activist, you can never work hard enough. There's always more. There's always things to do. And at some point, you just say, I can't keep doing it all. But there's this martyrdom of I have to give everything. I have to sacrifice my life in order to do this work. The selflessness means I can't be thinking about myself. People out there are having problems. People are in pain. People need me. And another activist was telling me, I was always carrying around these little voices in my head that we're saying you can't stop, you have to keep going. You can't, do all of this other stuff. You can't take time for yourself. I mean, there's all these starving people, and there's these people, and there's injustice, and there's whatever. I didn't think I deserved a life until everybody got a life. This can get you in trouble, big time, because what happens is, if that goes too far in terms of sacrificing yourself, you leave activism. You go. We lose very good people. And sometimes they never come back. They were there. We don't want to have lost them because of what they can contribute. But this can do it. I've talked to people who have left activism after having done some of these things. And they talk about, I didn't leave activism. It left me. Got to the point where, as we heard yesterday, on the death penalty thing, all the years of hard work and failure, and what is the accomplishment, and where is it going, and whatever. How do you keep sustaining yourself and the work in that kind of situation? And so they say, things have changed. This is not what I wanted to commit myself for. I'm out of here. So we lose good people, just as we lose good people in teaching, in healthcare, and all these other occupations. So that is a double-edged sword, that heart on fire, that passion that drives you, because it leads people into burnout. So I would like to sort of get to a better image. When I think of passion, I think of really more things that are growing and blossoming and developing and leading you to do some good things and taking joy in that and expanding it and sharing it. And so, although we use water to put out the external fire, as we were talking yesterday, you use water to essentially help things grow. And we need to sort of look at what are those things that can sustain. One of the other things I want to say is that when activists burn out, it's not just themselves that they take out of the picture. There's collateral damage, all the other people they're working with. What we find from the research with activists is that the other people you work with, your colleagues, come out as the best thing about the job. Simultaneously, they're listed as the worst thing about the job. Your best friends, your worst enemies, simultaneously. So there's both good and bad in there that you need to work on. And there's this stuff about, oh God, here I'm working so hard, but I'm doing the heavy lifting here. Where's everybody else? They're not as dedicated as I am. And you turn on those other people. Or you're saying, I don't ask much, but people don't deliver, and it's demoralizing. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? So it's not just what you do to yourself, it's what you do to other people. And I have seen groups where you see this little negative whirlwind that just sucks everybody into this downer environment. So it's important, realizing that other people are important. This is the downside, but there's a positive part as well. And that is a culture of community. This is something that, if there is one thing that we have found in research on burnout, and certainly with activists, it really, really depends on the we, on other people. What we know in psychology is that being in part of a social network, having friends, having family, having colleagues who know what you're going through and are, et cetera, that's the best thing for mental health, physical health, well-being, enjoyment of life. So you don't want to ruin it. You don't want to make it worse. You don't want to get away from it. You want to have it flourish. You want to water it. You want to keep it blooming. So it doesn't happen automatically. And so I'm listing a few things that have come out as major themes in a lot of the studies of things you can do and need to do to make sure that you're making this culture grow in a positive way. And the first thing that I wanted to point out is the positive recognition. This is little stuff. Say thank you occasionally. Go up to somebody, give them a hug, particularly if they're having a hard time. All of these kind of things, acknowledge you learned something. Social support, that you're there for people and they're there for you when you have questions, when you're stuck, when you're feeling a little bad about things or depressed. Sharing the work, rather than saying, it's all on my shoulders, trusting people, taking the time to learn who you are and sharing so you know who you can go to, who can be your friend. Taking care of each other. We heard about self-compassion, taking care of yourself, and I'm going to say yes, absolutely. But what we have found is that other people, may be the first to see in you something that's not going so well. And they may be the ones that need to, hey, having a bad day, you know, are you okay? How are things going? Maybe you need to go home early today. They do that for you, is taking care of yourself. So being sort of watchdogs, you know, for each other to help is really important. Taking care of yourself, very, very important. And I remember one activist who had not left, and we, you know, talking, and she had a lot of interesting things to say, but one of them I remember particularly is, she said, I've learned to relax a lot more. When I was younger, I used to think that I had to be working every single minute, that the planet would not follow its orbit if I wasn't pushing it, you know. But now, I find that I can go to the sauna, spa, and I'll still hate imperialism in an hour and a half, you know. And I've just learned, you know, that I can get back to it, and that the burden that is all on my shoulders to do everything is a responsibility that nobody can accept. That's too much. So taking care of each other, taking care of yourself. One other thing that is really important that has come out, and here's where Anthony's water, Sister River, it may seem trite, but is this half full or half empty? Okay, this water. Turns out that we have found that people who see their work as half full sustain their passion, keep going, manage even in the dark times. No matter how bad things get, they are always looking for something good. They are always trying to find, well, whoa, that was a really bad session I just had with that client, but what can I learn from this so it won't happen again? I'll be better next time. Even in the midst of what you would think would be a terrible day. The people who see the glass half empty, they are the ones who are going to burn out. They are the ones who are going to lose that passion. Because every day, we're not there. It's a failure. I see all the things we haven't done yet. We haven't gotten there. We've made progress, maybe we haven't made progress, but it's all this stuff that's empty. And so one of the things that we found was very helpful for people is to be able not just to get locked into that faraway goal, but think of the steps there and making sure to celebrate that and be pleased that you've made that progress. There's a quote that comes from Rebecca Solnit, who's a wonderful writer. She said, you know, victory is not the absolute state far away. It's the achievement of it, not the moon landing, but the flight. And she also she's a local writer. I'm sure many of you know her. She's done wonderful books like, you know, Wanderlust, The History of Walking. And probably her most recent book you may have heard, Men Explain Things to Me. You know, mansplaining. But the other interesting thing about Rebecca is that she's an activist. And she's been involved in some really important projects. And more than a decade ago, she wrote a book called Hope in the Dark about it. And one of the, you know, again, one of the insights she has is not about just the steps towards that, you know, victory, you know, and making progress. But she also said another thing, which I think is really important. If you embody what it is you aspire to, then you're succeeding. That is, if you practice things that are democratic, heroic, peaceful, creative, helpful, then in some small part of the world, those things succeed, and they are part of what we're all about. So that is something that I think is very profound in terms of what we do. And finally, one activist said, don't forget to live. You have to do that along with others, and I'm adding the others to what she said, rather than throw yourself into the fire and be consumed. So that double-edged fire that can, you know, be the passion, but also the thing that takes over you. Be careful of it. And I hope that those kind of things will help all of us make those little successes, keep us moving forward. And I hope with that, peace. Thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.